The morning light filtered through the curtains as I stood in Emma's bedroom, a box of packing tape in one hand and an empty cardboard box in the other. The walls, once covered with posters of bands and movie stars, now revealed patches of brighter paint where memories had hung for years. In 3 months, my daughter would be moving across the country to attend Stanford University. The thought made my chest tighten with both pride and an emptiness I wasn't ready to confront. "Just start with the bookshelf," I muttered to myself, placing the box on her desk. Emma was spending the weekend at her father's place, our custody arrangement still running like clockwork, even as she prepared to leave us both behind. I'd volunteered to help her start packing up the things she wouldn't need until college. In reality, I was searching for a way to process what was happening. How 18 years had slipped through my fingers like water. The bookshelf held volumes that traced her journey from childhood to adulthood. Worn copies of Harry Potter, SAT prep books, novels assigned in AP English, and hidden among them, journals I pretended not to notice. I carefully pulled books from the shelves, organizing them into piles. Take to college, store for later, donate. That's when I found it. As I removed her copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, a folded piece of paper slipped from between its pages and fluttered to the floor. I picked it up, assuming it was an old bookmark, or maybe class notes, but when I unfolded it, my breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakably Emma's, but younger, perhaps from middle school, judging by the slightly uneven cursive and the faded blue ink. At the top, she'd written, "Things I want to tell Mom someday, but can't right now." I hesitated, feeling like an intruder. I should fold it back up, return it to its hiding place, and pretend I never saw it. But my eyes had already caught the first line, and I couldn't stop reading. I saw Mom crying in the bathroom after the divorce papers came. "She thinks I don't know how hard this is for her. I wish I could tell her that I'm okay, that I don't blame her, that I know Dad is the one who left. But if I say that, she'll know I heard their fights, and that would just make her sadder." I sank onto Emma's bed, my hands trembling slightly. The divorce had happened when Emma was 12, 6 years ago. Mark had left me for a woman he'd met at a conference, a cliché I never thought would be part of my story. I'd tried so hard to shield Emma from the ugliness, to present a united front even as my world crumbled. I continued reading. I pretend I don't notice when Mom skips dinner and says she already ate. I know money is tight since Dad moved out. I want to tell her that I don't need new clothes for the spring dance, but then she might think I know we're struggling, and that would just make her worry more. Tears welled in my eyes. Those first years had been so difficult financially. I'd taken on extra shifts at the hospital, stretching my role as a nurse practitioner to the limit of my endurance. I'd been so careful to maintain the appearance of stability, cutting corners where I thought Emma wouldn't notice, skipping meals, postponing doctor appointments, wearing the same clothes until they nearly fell apart. I want to tell Mom how scared I was when Grandpa died, but she was already trying to be strong for Grandma and everyone else, so I pretended I was handling it better than I was. My father's death had been another breaking point, coming just a year after the divorce. I'd been so focused on supporting my mother and managing the funeral arrangements that I'd convinced myself Emma was coping well. She'd seemed so composed, so mature for her 13 years. I had no idea she'd been silently struggling. The list continued, each item revealing a moment when my daughter had shouldered burdens alone to protect me. I want to tell Mom that I saw her dating profile open on her laptop, and that it's okay if she wants to find someone new. Dad already has someone, and it's not fair that she's alone. I want to tell Mom that I'm worried about getting into a good college because I know she's counting on me to succeed where she couldn't. She had to drop out when she got pregnant with me, and I feel like I owe her this. That one hit like a physical blow. I had never, ever wanted Emma to feel that my interrupted education was her fault, or that my expectations for her were some form of compensation. Yet somehow she'd internalized that pressure. The final item on the list made my tears flow freely. Most of all, I want to tell Mom that she's my hero. Not because she's perfect, but because she keeps trying even when things are hard. I see how tired she is after night shifts, but she still makes time to help with my homework. I notice when she gives up things she wants so I can have what I need. I hope someday I can be as strong as her, and I hope someday I'll be brave enough to tell her all this. I sat there, the paper trembling in my hands as memories rewound and played with new context. All those moments, when I thought I was failing her, when I was certain my struggles were visible and burdensome, she had been seeing something entirely different. She had been seeing strength. The sound of my phone ringing startled me back to the present. I quickly wiped my eyes before answering. "Hey, Mom." Emma's voice came through clear and cheerful. "How's the packing going?" "It's going," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just sorting through your bookshelf." "Cool. Don't throw anything away without checking with me first, okay? Some of those books have notes in them I might need." If only you knew, I thought. "Don't worry, I'm being careful," I promised. "How's your dad's?" "Fine. We're going out for dinner tonight with Melissa and the twins." Melissa was Mark's wife now, and they had 5-year-old twins together. A complicated extension of our family that Emma had adapted to with remarkable grace. "That sounds nice. Have fun." After we hung up, I carefully refolded the note and slipped it into my pocket. I wasn't sure yet what I would do with it, but I knew I couldn't simply put it back. Those words had shifted something fundamental in how I saw our shared history, and I needed time to process what that meant. As I continued packing, one thought kept circling in my mind. How many other unspoken truths were hidden in the spaces between us? And more importantly, was it too late to start bringing them into the light? That night, after tucking the note into my journal, I found myself unable to sleep. Memories surfaced like bubbles in still water. Moments with Emma that now carried new meaning in light of what I'd read. I remembered the night after my father's funeral, finding Emma in the kitchen at 2 a.m., methodically washing dishes that were already clean. When I'd asked if she was okay, she'd simply said, "I just wanted to help." I had attributed it to restlessness, to the normal disruption of grief. Now I understood it had been her way of trying to lighten my load when she couldn't find words for her own pain. The next morning, I pulled out photo albums and spent hours looking at images of Emma growing up. Her gap-toothed smile in elementary school, her awkward middle school phase with braces and experimental hairstyles, the poised young woman who had emerged in high school. In each stage, I tried to see beyond my own memories to what might have been happening in her interior world. The note had opened a door I couldn't close, making me question every interaction we'd had since the divorce. Had I been so wrapped up in my own struggle to keep our lives on track that I'd missed the subtle ways my daughter had been protecting me? The thought was both touching and devastating. When Emma returned from her father's house that Sunday evening, I found myself studying her face, searching for traces of that 12-year-old girl who had written the note. "What?" she asked, catching me staring as she unpacked her overnight bag. "Do I have something on my face?" "No," I said quickly. "Just thinking about how grown up you look these days." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Mom, you literally say that every time I come home from anywhere." "Do I?" Well, it keeps being true. I wanted to mention the note, to open a conversation about all the things she'd never felt she could tell me, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear that she would feel her privacy had been invaded, or worry that bringing up old wounds would only complicate this already emotional time of transition. Instead, I said, "I was thinking maybe we could do something special before you leave for Stanford. Just the two of us. A road trip, maybe?" Emma looked surprised. "What about work? I thought you couldn't take time off until fall." "I have some vacation days saved up, and this is more important." Her face softened. "That would be really nice, Mom." Over the following weeks, as Emma finished her senior year, I found myself paying closer attention to the things unsaid between us. I noticed how she downplayed her nervousness about final exams, how she reassured me about college costs, even as I saw her researching part-time jobs near campus. The pattern revealed in the note continued. Her instinct to protect me from additional worry remained intact. One evening in May, as graduation approached, I found Emma at the kitchen table surrounded by note cards and laptop. "Working on your valedictorian speech?" I asked, setting a mug of tea beside her. She nodded, looking frustrated. "It's supposed to be meaningful and personal, but not cliché. Turns out that's an impossible combination." I sat down across from her. "What are you trying to say?" "I don't know. Something about journeys and futures and blah blah blah." She pushed her notes away. "Everyone expects this profound statement about what high school meant and what comes next. but it all sounds so generic when I try to put it on paper. I thought about the note, about the depth of feeling and maturity it had revealed in my daughter years before. Maybe instead of saying what people expect, you could say something true, something real about what you've learned, not just in school, but in life. Emma gave me a curious look. Like what? I hesitated, then decided to take a risk. Like how sometimes the hardest lessons aren't in any curriculum. How we grow up learning to navigate not just subjects, but relationships, changes, losses. Something in my tone must have revealed more than I intended, because Emma's expression turned serious. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I assured her. "Just thinking about how much you've handled these past few years, the divorce, your grandfather passing, all the changes in our family, you've dealt with it all with such grace." She looked down at her notes. "Not always. I just tried not to make things harder for you." The echo of her written words from years ago hung between us. I reached across the table and took her hand. "You know you never have to protect me, right? That's my job as your mother. It goes both ways sometimes," she said quietly. "That's what family means." In that moment, I nearly told her about finding the note. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but something told me to wait, that there would be a better time, a moment when that revelation could serve a greater purpose than just unburdening my own heart. Instead, I squeezed her hand and said, "I'm so proud of the person you've become, Emma, and I want you to know that whatever you decide to say in your speech, it will be perfect, because it will be yours." She smiled, the tension breaking. "Even if I just recite song lyrics from the 90s, especially then. Your generation could use some cultural education." As graduation day approached, I found myself returning to the note repeatedly, reading those heartfelt words from a younger Emma, until I nearly had them memorized. In those simple sentences was a story of our relationship that I hadn't fully understood until now, a story of mutual protection, of love expressed not just in what we said to each other, but in what we chose to bear alone. The realization sparked an idea that both terrified and exhilarated me. I wasn't sure if it was brilliant or terrible, but once the thought took hold, I couldn't let it go. If Emma had wanted to tell me these things someday, perhaps I could help that someday arrive, in a way that would honor her words rather than expose them. 2 nights before graduation, I sat down at my computer and began to write a letter of my own. It would be my gift to Emma, a response 6 years delayed, but perhaps arriving at exactly the right time. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect June morning that seems designed for new beginnings. I woke early, my stomach fluttering with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The letter I had written was folded in my purse, along with Emma's original note. I still wasn't entirely sure I would go through with my plan, but I wanted to be prepared either way. Emma was already up when I emerged from my bedroom, sitting at the kitchen island in her pajamas, coffee mug in hand, staring into space with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Nervous?" I asked, pouring myself a cup from the pot she'd brewed. She nodded. "I keep thinking I'll forget my speech halfway through, or trip on my gown, or accidentally set off the beach ball the seniors are planning to bounce during the ceremony." I laughed. "All valid concerns, but you'll be magnificent, beach balls notwithstanding." She smiled weakly, then her expression grew more serious. "Mom, do you ever wonder how different things might have been? If you and Dad had stayed together, or if Grandpa hadn't died when he did, or if any of the big things had gone differently?" The question caught me off guard. "Sometimes," I admitted. "It's hard not to imagine alternative versions of our lives. But then I look at you, at the amazing young woman you've become through all of it, and I can't wish for anything different. Every hard thing we went through helped shape who we are now." Emma nodded slowly. "That's kind of what my speech is about, actually. How we're all shaped by the challenges, not just the achievements. Everyone talks about high school being the best years of your life, but for a lot of us, they were really hard years. Important, but hard." My heart swelled with pride. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." 3 hours later, we were at the high school football field, transformed for the occasion with rows of white chairs, a stage, and fluttering banners in the school colors. As a parent of the valedictorian, I had a seat in the front row. Mark was there too, with Melissa and the twins, maintaining the careful civility we'd cultivated over the years. "She's going to do great," he said, as we waited for the ceremony to begin. "I know," I replied. And for once the conversation didn't feel strained. We were united in this moment at least, in our pride for the remarkable person we'd somehow managed to raise despite our failures. The ceremony proceeded with the expected mixture of pomp and circumstance. The processional of graduates in their blue caps and gowns, the principal's welcome, the presentation of honors and scholarships. Through it all, my attention remained fixed on Emma, sitting on stage with the other honor students, her posture straight, but her hands fidgeting slightly in her lap, a telltale sign of her nervousness that only a mother would notice. Finally, it was time for her speech. The principal introduced her with a list of accomplishments that made my chest tighten with pride: National Honor Society president, volunteer work at the Children's Hospital, first place in the state science fair, and accepted with a scholarship to Stanford. Emma approached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and took a deep breath. Her eyes found mine in the audience, and I gave her an encouraging nod. "Good morning, faculty, families, and fellow graduates," she began, her voice steady despite the slight tremor I could detect in her hands. "We're here today to celebrate an ending and a beginning, which sounds like a greeting card sentiment, but it's also the simple truth." She paused, looking out over the crowd. When I sat down to write this speech, I wanted to avoid cliches about journeys and futures and dreams. But the truth is, those cliches exist for a reason. We are at a crossroads. We are turning a page. We are stepping into the unknown, and it is both exciting and terrifying. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. But what I really want to talk about today isn't what lies ahead, it's what lies behind. Not just the achievements listed in our yearbooks or on our college applications, but the invisible stories that have shaped each of us. My hand moved to my purse, fingers brushing against the letter inside. High school wasn't just AP tests and prom nights and sports championships. It was also parents divorcing, grandparents dying, friendships ending, hearts breaking. It was struggling with identity and purpose and mental health. It was learning how to carry burdens we never expected to bear. The audience had grown completely silent. Every face turned toward my daughter as she spoke truths rarely acknowledged at such ceremonies. We all have stories we don't tell. Moments of doubt, fear, and failure that shaped us as much as our successes. And we all have people in our lives who helped us through those moments. Sometimes without even knowing it. Her eyes found mine again, and I saw in them a depth of understanding that took my breath away. "My mother is here today," she continued, and my heart began to race. "And like many of your parents, she sacrificed more than I'll probably ever fully understand to get me to this moment. What she doesn't know is that years ago, I wrote a list of things I wanted to tell her someday but couldn't find the words for then." My hand froze on my purse. She knew? How could she possibly know about the note? I wrote about how I saw her strength during our hardest times, how I noticed the sacrifices she made, how I admired her resilience even when I didn't know how to say it out loud. I hid that note in a book, promising myself that someday I would be brave enough to share those feelings. Tears welled in my eyes as Emma continued. I didn't know that someday would be today, or that it would be in front of all of you. But what I've realized is that we all have these unspoken appreciations, these acknowledgments we're waiting for the right moment to express. She looked around at her classmates. So my challenge to you, to all of us, is this. Don't wait for someday. The people who have supported you, inspired you, carried you to this moment deserve to know what they mean to you. Not eventually, not when it feels comfortable, but now. The first tear slipped down my cheek as Emma turned back to me. "Mom, you've been my hero. Not because you're perfect, but because you kept trying even when things were hard. I saw how tired you were after night shifts, but you still made time for me. I noticed when you gave up things you wanted so I could have what I needed. I hope someday I can be as strong as you, and today I'm finally brave enough to tell you that." The words from her childhood note, spoken aloud 6 years later, broke something open inside me. I couldn't hold back the tears now, didn't even try. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that even Mark was wiping his eyes. Emma finished her speech with words for her classmates about carrying their stories forward with courage, about the strength that comes from vulnerability. about the power of speaking truths, long held silent. The applause when she finished was thunderous, but I barely heard it through the rushing in my ears. When the ceremony ended and the graduates had received their diplomas, Emma found me in the crowd. Without a word, she pulled a folded paper from beneath her gown and handed it to me. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "The note. When you were packing my room." I nodded, unable to speak. "I saw it was missing when I got home that day," she explained. "At first I was embarrassed, thinking about you reading all those private thoughts. But then I realized maybe it was meant to be found. Maybe someday had finally arrived." I pulled her into a fierce hug, whispering into her hair, "I am so incredibly proud of you." When we separated, I reached into my purse and pulled out the letter I had written. "I wrote this for you after finding your note. I was going to give it to you today, but you beat me to it with your speech." She took it, her eyes bright with tears and curiosity. "Read it later," I said, "when you're alone." Around us, families were taking photos, graduates were hugging teachers, the ordinary chaos of celebration unfolding. But in that moment, it felt like Emma and I existed in our own bubble of understanding, years of unspoken truths finally acknowledged. "Ready for lunch?" Mark approached with his camera. "We have a reservation at Maggiano's for all of us." All of us now included Mark's new family alongside Emma and me, a complicated constellation I never would have chosen but had learned to navigate. Emma looked at me questioningly, checking if I was okay with the arrangement. I smiled, feeling a new lightness. "Absolutely. Let's celebrate." Later that night, after the celebrations had ended and Emma was in her room, presumably reading my letter, I sat on the porch swing with a glass of wine. The emotional weight of the day had left me drained but peaceful. My phone lit up with a text from Emma. "I love you too, Mom. Always have. Always will. Thank you for seeing me, even when I thought I was hiding." I looked up at the stars, bright in the clear June sky, and felt a sense of completion. The note that had remained hidden for so long had finally served its purpose, not just in being read, but in being understood. The years between writing and discovery had changed us both, but the love at the core remained constant, stronger now for having weathered so much. In a few months, Emma would leave for college, beginning the next chapter of her life 3,000 miles away, but the distance wouldn't matter as much now. We had crossed a different kind of distance today, one measured not in miles, but in truths spoken after years of silence. I texted back, "No more hiding," for either of us. "Deal?" Her response came immediately, "Deal." And in that simple exchange was the promise of a new kind of relationship, one built not just on the roles of mother and daughter, but on the recognition of each other as complete human beings, complex and flawed and perfectly imperfect. The note had been a catalyst, but what mattered more was what came after. The courage to keep speaking truths, to keep seeing each other clearly, to keep loving through all the changes still to come.